Hi, I'm KK Menon. You can watch my interview on WhatsApp with Vasant. So, interesting conversation. Watch.
KK Menon, considered one of the finest actors to have graced Indian celluloid for a little over 2 decades now, is best known for his intense, unpredictable, and mercurial display of emotions that grab the audiences by the scruff of their necks. Be it as Luke, the jobless psychopath rock musician in the Anurag Kashyap cult classics Paanch, or the firebrand rebel Dukey Bana in Gulaal, the evil Brigadier Pratap Singh in Shaurya, or the conniving and crafty Khurram in Haider, the ultra conservative Partho in Honeymoon Travels, and many, many more, KK leaves you spellbound with his artistry. I found through this interview that KK is monk like calm, super witty, and scholarly in his take on life, society, and cinema, and a humble, dedicated servant of the art forms. We talked about a host of things from acting to finding one's true calling, discussed society, and lots more. This interview with one of my favorite actors of all time was a bucket list item finally checked off. Lastly, I'd like to give a shout out to actor director Raj Singh Chaudhary for his contributions to this channel. With that said, like always, sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy this interview. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel.
For those of you who have just tuned in and are wondering who this man on the screen is, then you must be an alien on a planetary form very, very far from here. The rest of you, please give a virtual applause and shout in unison with me. Veer Bhoge Vasundhara, Jai Rajputana, none other than the legendary KK Menon is with us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm calling from Earth.
All right, so let's take this from the top. Let's dive into this interview. So, get into your past. Try to get an understanding of where you were born, a bit about your family and your early days.
I was born in Kerala, but I was there for about precisely 2 months as a
Acha.
baby, and then I shifted to Maharashtra.
Okay.
So, for all practical purposes, I'm a Maharashtrian in that sense. I've
Okay.
lived my entire life here, all over Maharashtra, be it Pune, be it Chandrapur, be it Ambernath,
Okay.
various places in Maharashtra. So yeah,
Sure.
so my Malayalam is not that good, but I
Acha.
can manage Marathi.
Acha. Can you tell us a bit about your family from back then? A bit about your family, your parents, or your
Uh,
siblings?
my father used to. I'm the only child, so my father
Acha.
used to work for the ordnance factories,
Acha.
and he which makes ammunition for the army. So basically,
Acha.
he used to work there, and it was a transferable job. But
Okay.
thankfully, he was getting transferred only within Maharashtra.
Acha.
So yeah, so from one end of Maharashtra to the other.
Okay.
And it so happened that when I was in Pune, the Hindi is slightly dicey because you have the Gaela Aila kind of Hindi, which is seriously spoken,
Acha.
I mean it's a dialect over there.
Right.
So,
Right.
but at that point in time, I was in a convent,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how English is kind of necessary thing over there, and a
Sure.
lot of accent on English itself. So
Right.
my
Right.
English kind of was pretty good, but my
Acha.
Hindi was very very bad.
Okay.
Then Dad got shifted to a place called Chandrapur, which is close to the MP border,
Okay.
Maharashtra and MP border.
Okay.
So in Maharashtra, so there people spoke extremely good Hindi.
Acha.
So that's where my Hindi I kind of brushed up, and so I've got best of both the worlds.
That's nice.
But I'm not the master of any, none of them. I'm not the master of it. I'm kind
Okay.
of
Okay.
decent in both. So this is kind
Sure.
of
Sure.
a thing I mean which I had, and of course, and grew up. I did my I became a graduate in physics,
Acha.
and then I did my MBA. I dabbled in advertising for some time.
Wow.
So yeah, all that stuff happened, and I
Interesting.
believe that no education goes waste.
Sure.
That get applied somewhere or the other. So
Okay.
it's helped me in my profession as well.
Cool. That's really nice. So just going back to your schooling days, what was the initial sort of influence for you that got you into acting? What was your first experience?
I had no idea. I only knew what was making me happy.
Acha.
As I said, I finished my MBA and things like that. There are certain things that you kind of don't know about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a little bit of introspection to know what you're skilled at actually.
Correct. Correct.
Till then, your desires kind of overtake that.
Okay.
so so you get into advertising thinking that that's what you want to do,
Sure,
You know,
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. So, and the monies are good and everything is good, life
Mm-hmm.
is cushy. So all that stuff happened. But I always realized that um, when I was on stage as a kid, I think I did
Yeah.
my first play when I was 9 years old,
Acha.
and I played a sunflower. I
Acha.
don't remember.
Nice. Acha.
So yeah, so ever since then, whenever I used to have these annual school functions, this and that, I used to be a permanent feature in plays,
Okay.
and I used to enjoy that whole. I don't know, somehow I used to feel elevated as a person when I was on stage.
Acha.
But yeah, as being the only child, I learned to be with my own devices, and
Right,
that
right.
also is also your imagination is there, and then you work with your, because all the time you don't have somebody to play with. So
Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
so those things have kind of also molded me in a way.
Right, right.
So isolation, I'm even if I'm alone, I'm not lonely.
Got it.
Yeah, so things like that have happened. So anyway, that I then later on when was doing my advertising and things like that, and I used to still keep doing plays in college in my entire education. I used to find that to be a state of bliss.
Acha.
And it's only later that I realized that my actual calling is supposed to be acting, and I'm doing something else.
Acha.
And it's my, and I believe seriously that every human being is bestowed with one or more skills.
Right.
While
Right.
he's born,
Yeah.
he or she is born with a particular skill. But your desires in life don't really, normally, most of the time, doesn't match with those skills. So,
Right, right.
like, for example, some people can just sing. They have
Mm-hmm.
never had any training. That
Correct.
means it's given to you, you know. So I found that match. I found that calling slightly later after
Right,
my
right.
advertising. I just felt no, this is not what I wanted to do, and this is not giving me that bliss.
Sure,
And I just
sure.
recalled my entire young age at a point in time, and realized that perhaps acting is the one which actually gives me that little feeling of bliss and ecstasy.
Sure.
So I plunged back into, I would say back into acting. I did theatre again. Went back into theatre. I closed shop.
Let me
Dukaan jo hoti hai.
let me cut you off there for 1 second. I just want to take
Yeah.
you back a little bit, just so our
Yeah.
audiences get that progression of how you went from your school into college and you discovered theater and stuff. So then, at that time, what were your influences? Was it very organic, whatever you were watching on TV or movies? Were there friends who were like informing you that you should listen to this kind of music or that kind of books? Um,
No, it's like this. If you are actually, the reason why I'm giving you a basis for this is because I realized this later on.
Okay.
It didn't come to me then. Then I was not so evolved as a child.
Acha,
I didn't
okay,
know.
okay,
So, but I realized later on what actually triggered it off. In the sense
okay.
that I realized that later on, of course, in life, that if you are bestowed with music, for example,
Mhm.
you will be automatically be drawn to certain kind of music and intricacies of music and things like that
Sure, sure.
without knowing it. It won't be just for the name and fame. It will be much
Okay.
more than that.
Right,
The interest would be not just for the name and fame. It would be much more than that. The depth of it.
got
So
it.
that's what happened to me. So I really, when I was on stage also, I just enjoyed the whole process so much, and started delving deep into it in a way that how does one do the scene? What do you do for that scene? And why is he speaking like
So
this?
there
And
was
all
no
those questions just come.
angst. A lot of people say अंदर से बहुत angst होता है, बहुत सारा अंदर suppressed ये होता है. वो सब कुछ नहीं था. It was just a very natural calling for you.
Yeah, it is. If it's your calling, then you never labor in that. That's my whole point.
Right.
It's like Sachin Tendulkar was born to play cricket. You can see him and you know that the bat seems like an extension of his hand.
Correct, correct.
So it's that organic for him.
That
So similarly, every person has something.
Got it.
Somebody might be bestowed with making of furniture, for example, the best
Absolutely.
furniture in the world.
Yeah,
But he wants to become an actor. That might be a desire which is not
Yeah,
coinciding with his bestowed, skill.
got it. So now, when you did your MBA, you graduated, you got into ad filmmaking, right? Was it ad filmmaking?
Yes.
And then you also set up your own little business in Dadar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay. So then at that time, you had this revelation that, you did an introspection and you found that you wanted to go about. So how did you carve that sort of path to leave that and then get into theater or movies or cinema?
It didn't take much for me to decide then. Once I was clear on the swadharma that I'm supposed to follow, or the calling that I have, and what I've been bestowed with, I realized that is the way forward, because that is what you've been given as a skill, and
Sure,
if you
sure.
hone those skills, जिसको हिंदी में हम बोलते हैं गति बढ़ जाती है.
अच्छा.
You speed up automatically.
अच्छा.
So like a person who learns something without having the bestowed skill in him. That's why I say all artists are actually first born,
Right.
and then
Absolutely.
they hone those skills.
Right.
A star can be made, but an artist is born. An actor is born. You cannot make really an actor, because after, the person who's not given that skill already by providence will go only thus far.
Correct.
In that craft.
Right,
but the speed will. Anyway, so coming back to this, yes, it didn't take much time for me. I जैसे बोलते हैं हिंदी में दुकान बंद कर दी मैंने, shutter बंद. I just closed shop, and I went to directly into finding out where rehearsals are happening for on stage. And I joined Motley after that.
Okay.
And then the journey began. Then, of course, the monies weren't there. Everything was different.
Yeah,
but I was never. I don't call myself, in the sense that it was I became a pauper by choice.
Correct. Yeah.
It was not by chance.
Yeah.
It's not that I could not do anything or could not earn money.
Yeah.
So I went through that whole process.
So could you talk a bit about that? Because I'm familiar with it. I have seen all your interviews, so I know your journey. But that period where you were staying with a bunch of people who were also aspiring actors, I think?
No. From
different
fields.
Not actors. Okay. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, we were friends who have from various disciplines and various things. And since we knew each other once upon a time in MBA or somewhere else, we all got together and stayed together. So that was the case. But there was one common streak. Fondness for literature, fondness for the art was always there. So I've often mentioned this earlier also in my interview, that we were living in one railway colony, with the trains going by every 3 minutes and sound. And it was on rent, and 4 or 5 guys were staying together. And but thankfully, I had the right company. Mumbai is a place where बोलते हैं हादसों का शहर. It's so you can go either ways.
Right.
The spectrum. Mumbai is actually a microcosm of the world.
Correct.
Everything is available here. Everything happens here.
Right.
It depends on what your choice is.
Correct.
So thankfully, I had right bunch of people with me at the point in time, and that again is providence, according to me. I didn't choose them; they just happened that they got together. So we used to do all this loud readings at night,
right?
Because कुछ करने को तो था नहीं. So whether it's Russian literature, all your stuff, one person would read.
Sorry, go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
So in the sense that when you read a book, you've read the book, then you'll pass it on to me, then I read the book. So it takes a lot of time. So the best thing is one person reads aloud, and everybody participates in that reading. And at one stroke, 5 people have read the book.
Right. Makes sense.
So it consumes less time. So it's like one person reads a book and everybody hears it, so you know the book. That kind of thing used to happen. We used to enjoy that. Yeah. So that was the whole journey, and we just kind of, instead of actually whiling away our time in wild deeds, we spend a lot of time in this, and we should do our own masti in a different way.
Okay. And then somewhere along the way, you chanced upon the Motley group. You got into working with Naseeruddin Shah.
Yeah, they were already 2 months down in rehearsal, so there was no space for me. So I was a part of the crowd first, part of the one century somewhere, kind of thing. Julius Caesar was happening, so it had cast of about 70 people. So I was one of them. So it didn't really. And then gradually, of course, I proceeded to do other stuff.
Sir, you know what I always find is the audacious and the courageous nature that you have, this level of confidence that is unprecedented, this surety that you have about yourself, because going to the Motley and watching senior actors, these, stalwarts like Naseeruddin Shah, approaching them must have required tremendous amounts of knowledge and confidence about your own craft. I mean, you could not have just turned up and pursued it with someone like Naseeruddin Shah straight up and said, Naseer bhai, do you have work for me or something? So how did you do that?
The fact is, as I told you earlier, once you're sure of the fact that you're blessed with something, then you might as well not go in that route. Because the moment you don't, it was not just a desire for me. It was something that I knew I had in me, which I wanted to do. Like, for example, one could hum a tune and one could sing a bit, but would never dare do that in front of, say, a pandit, of music.
Correct.
But when you know about acting, and you know that this is something, a journey which I think I'm given something here. I just need to hone those skills. So that's what I did. So yeah, gradually, of course, I did a play called Mahatma versus Gandhi, which is a big play. Nasir and me did that play, father and son. So that became a big play afterwards. And of course, I continued my theatre activities. And then those days, television was much different.
Right.
There were no daily soaps.
Right.
So we used to do these. We used to do these under the broad title of, say, Saturday Suspense and Star Bestsellers and Rishte. You had these broad titles in which you had different stories.
Right.
So I used to do a lot of them, also for earning money. At the same time, it was satisfying because it was like doing a small film each time.
Correct.
A different film each time for 1 hour. 1 hour episode. So you're doing one character, then you finish that, and then you play some other person the next one. So that was interesting for me as a journey also.
So let me ask you a question here. So when you look at someone like Naseeruddin Shah himself, you've worked with him in theatre, and you look at Om Puri, and you look at their filmography from the 70s and 80s, and they did the works with the Ketan Mehtas, the Sai Paanch, Shyam Benegals, and they did works like Ardha Satya Akrosh and so on and so forth. That is an enviable body of work, and that quality of work that these crew of people did, it wasn't just the two of them. Somewhere along the way, was that something that you also felt should be sort of your lineage, or should be your sort of legacy when you finish? Because at that time you were doing good television, you were doing solid theatre. What drew you to cinema at that time? And was there this fascination for what Naseer Bhai or Om Puri Saab did? Or did you also want to follow in their footsteps?
I guess fascination would be the wrong term. I think inspiration would be the right term, because there are so many people who inspire you, not just the ones that you mentioned.
Sure.
But there are films abroad, right? From so many of them, and within India itself. So there are so many people you watch and you realize, and it's a process of discovery for an actor.
Right.
If you're too overawed with what has happened or what is going to happen, whether it's people or events, then you have less time for your own craft. So you got to also concentrate on your own craft and try and bring out something which is unique. Otherwise, it just becomes trying to be somebody else, and that doesn't work for me. So so the idea is you can get inspiration from thousands of people. From, say, I have a list of actors who are more than 100, 120, who have done some fabulous job in some film, somewhere, something. These are all, you know that this can be achieved.
Correct.
What you can get out of it is that, this can be achieved.
Right.
So you try your own way to do something which is unique.
Right.
That's the only way to go about it. But if you stay overawed, then you are dwarfed in your own eyes. You should not be doing that.
Okay. So you wanted to have your own organic sort of a path carved out by chance, by destiny, by circumstance, rather than necessarily piecing
not
it
exactly
together.
Destiny. I wouldn't really challenge Destiny. Destiny can do whatever it wants to do, but it's your job to see to it that you got your principles correct.
Okay.
Because you got to really think about your principles. In terms of any art form. So there are certain principles I already had decided in the beginning, that when I get out of my house, I don't need a background score in real life. I don't need those flash cameras which are being planted by your manager. I go to Prithvi Theatre, so you have few cameras peeking you. All that stuff is all planted. I don't want that. I really rather work inwards, and that will have its own glow, and that people will realize. These are principles which I had already decided when I was mulling over acting itself.
Okay.
So what is the route that you want to take is something that you have to decide. Once you're on that route, then you can blossom the way you want to blossom. You can do those mainstream films also. You can do whatever you want to do. But the point is that you need to first choose a particular path within the path and be happy there. That makes you happy.
So it's my observation that you are self-aware, because I've seen all of your interviews. You seem extremely grounded, and you have these principles and siddhant that you keep talking about. And were there people that helped sort of influence this, or was it, who would you be able to mention some of them from your early days that have been a big influence on your life?
Well, I mean, a very close friend and a philosopher guide, whatever you want to call him, is a person called Raj Supe,
Acha.
who now has gone into Adhyatma. He's in Rishikesh. So
Okay.
he's gone a different route. I mean, he was again one of the people who we used to all live together in those days,
Acha.
when the reading days. So yeah, he has been. So these influences really help you, because these are slightly wiser influences.
Yeah.
They're not baser. Baser, every man can manage.
Yeah.
The wiser ones, you need a little bit of a bouncing board. You need to talk, you need to do things. So these things happen. So you apply whatever is applicable to your craft, and go along with it. Don't think that one craft is less than the other.
Correct.
You might be an artisan, and you might be a great artisan. You might be, as I told you earlier, you might be an architect. You might be a furniture maker. You might be a shoemaker. Anything. But so it's just, there are only two aspects to it. Any form of profession. One is, first, are you question yourself very sincerely, honestly, are you given that talent or not? By providence, number one. Number two, once you are sure that you're given that talent, then hone it to the best possible ability. Work hard. That's the only two things that you need to really do, and keep doing it, and something will happen out of it. So that's the way. But the moment I start deciding on something that I ought to do, and this is what I want to reach, then it goes for a toss. Then everything goes for a toss. It's like hitting the ball without seeing it, and watching the boundary hit. You'll get bored.
Correct. Now, just going back to your theater days again, did you find that doing theater helped you as an actor more in the terms of the skills that are involved with being an actor on stage? Is that a more skilled job than acting in front of a camera, or they are just completely different worlds?
I don't know if most of the theater people would agree with me, but I believe both have different skill sets.
Okay.
They have to have different. What is common is that both are called acting. It falls under the broad umbrella of acting. But within that, theater performances and a cinema performance have to have different craft, different expertise in craft, different practices that you need to do to reach that. So most theater people would say, hey, this is nonsense. Acting is acting. But that doesn't happen. According to me, I think there's a finer difference between the two. And what theater acting can actually give you, which you can carry forward to cinema, is the confidence of acting, the confidence of being in front of people and performing, yet not being overawed by them or conscious of them. These kind of things will help you carry that confidence you can get from theater, and also you can experience the high. This is how you get the high, while acting. So these are things that you can carry forward. But craft-wise, I think they are pretty much different. I'll give you a small example, for example, and then from that you can extrapolate to the other aspects of acting. In theater, the actor reaches out to the audience. Right? The last bencher needs to be heard.
You have to be loud about your acting.
Not loud. I mean, you go to project well. Loudness and projection are two different things.
Okay.
So you need to reach out. That's why I said reach out. You need to reach out so that he can also feel the same feeling. Correct?
Right.
In cinema, it's exactly the opposite. The audience reaches out to the actor via the camera.
Okay.
So I can come close to you, see your eyes, what you're feeling, and go back. Whereas in theater, the actor reaches out to the audience. In cinema, the audience reaches out to the actor. So this is a kind of an opposite stream. So what happens is the pitching of your performance differs. Because via the camera, the audience is coming. If they feel that you're sad, the next cut would be closer to your eyes, closer to your face. You would see the face. I didn't say I'm sad or make a gesture of sadness, which I would have to do in theater.
For the last person to see.
Everybody. And plus, they don't have the facility of seeing anything else but a form and your speech in theater. These are the only tools available for the audiences to to enjoy theatre of an actor. That is your speech, your voice, speech, and the gestural quality and the form. That's it. In cinema, you have a lot more things to observe, of the actor. So you can easily make out even if he's faking. Yeah.
Would you think that it's actually then, in fact, that cinema may be a little more complex, or do you think that's
I know. It is for me. It is you've got to endure it, because you give a shot, you give a take, you come back, you wait, and then you wait for the next. So there's a lot of waiting period. So if you say that test match cricket vis-a-vis a T20 cricket, that's the kind of difference. Both are cricket only.
Yeah.
But the shots in T20 are much projection-wise all over the place.
Correct,
I don't know
correct.
cricket. I give a cricket analogy because most Indians understand cricket. So the shots are very flamboyant, very.
Sure.
But it's only for directly you play, and you play 20 overs and finish.
Got it.
It's one go, like theatre. You start and you end.
Right.
So in that flow, a lot of magic can happen. In test match cricket, there might be a whole day in which the ball even doesn't come to you in the field. You're waiting, but you're waiting for that opportunity that you get, of batting, bowling, or receiving a catch. So it's also an endurance test in cinema. How long are you able to keep yourself interested in it? So along with the skills required, you also have to have the kind of tenacity to hold on. And at the same time be able to, because unlike theatre, which is like first scene to last scene, in linear fashion it goes.
Correct.
In cinema, you're shooting the second scene first, then or perhaps even the last scene first, and then doing the rest. So you've got to be very malleable at the same time. So these are things that you've got to understand. You've got to also know, okay, fine, I might pitch it at that level. Now let's throw myself into the scene. So these things are there. So craft-wise, it's majorly different. Majorly different. Yeah.
Got it. So
it's only that difference is that in cinema you have takes. In theatre, you don't have a separate take. You have to do it in one take.
Okay.
That's the only thing.
So those of you who've not seen a lot of KK Menon sir's interviews must watch them, because he talks a lot about Ramesh the cop, Suresh the cop. I'd been waiting to bring this up. And he talks about his process being as, taking that Aladdin ka lamp and then rubbing it until a genie appears. And I was waiting to get to this point before he brought it up, because I could show off that I had seen all of his interviews. So sir, I have done a little bit of theatre, and I just wanted to kind of get a sense of what do you mean by, so you read your script over and over again when you're doing that process of rubbing the lamp. But what about the actual enactment? Because I was watching an interview of Piyush Mishra's, and he was saying that, you're like an instrument. Your body is like an instrument as an actor, which you constantly got to keep in tune, like a guitar. So you can't just start working on a film and be able to get into character. Because the characters, even if you can pick it up, you have to do your everyday rehearsal, right? So do you have anything outside of the reading that you do to hone your craft? Do you partake in exercise?
That is essential for any profession. I mean, it's not possible that you don't practice your sport in the nets and directly go into a test match. You can't do that. Right. So the practice is always required, and that's a given. That's not it's there for every profession. If you're a singer, then you'll do your riyaz every day. If you're an actor, you'll do something or the other. You will try and work out various ways in which you can do your speech, can do your stuff. There's so many things that you do, but that's not specifically for that part. But that's a separate riyaz that you do. That's a separate sadhana that you do.
Right.
That is your tools have to be sharpened. Is even when you are, say, in the army, you have to sharpen. You have to clean your barrel of the gun all the time. You can't keep it rusted. So that's a part and parcel of it. So that's what. So you can come to your favorite question. What do we want to ask?
So what do you do then? What is your riyaz? How do you do it?
There are so many things.
If I may ask.
So many things. One is I consider all other activities, including my sports activities, to be a part of the sadhana. If I'm playing tennis, it is still a part of it. Because an actor's instrument is everything about him. There is no external instrument available to him. Right. An engineer might have a spanner, or a scientist might have or a research scientist might have a microscope as an external tool. We don't have anything else. So it's top to bottom, everything that you can imagine.
Yeah.
So you keep yourself healthy, you do your stuff, you do your exercises which are required for you to keep yourself. Keep doing some musical riyaz as well. Do everything possible. So it all depends on the mood of the day, but you just keep doing it.
Okay.
But don't shirk from that responsibility. That's the only thing. You keep doing it. And for example, when I'm playing a sport, the agility, everything comes of use. Every damn thing comes of use. Tomorrow, if I'm running behind somebody in a film, it'll come of use.
Of course, yeah.
That too, we run at 3 o'clock in the night when the world is sleeping. That's a different thing. But
sure, absolutely.
So everything comes of use. So every damn thing that you do in real life will come of use. If you are finding yourself imagining some situation, imagine it totally. People might think you're a madman talking to yourself. That's perfectly fine, but do it. What I meant.
Okay. So, this whole hawa about method acting, a lot of people talk about it, and in our industry, of course, it's been used, abused, and much more by lesser people who have a lesser understanding of it. Do you believe that actors can stay in character when the camera is turned off? Because I've seen footage of guys like Joaquin Phoenix behind the scenes, and I don't know if it's pretentious or if it's affected. Or would you have any comment to make on that, or do you think it could happen that someone could be in fact in character even when being fully method about the process?
Being in character while shooting is okay, but after you finish your shoot, then being in character is slightly dangerous, because that would upset your domestic life. That I don't think is not certainly not called for, because that would start playing tricks with your mind, which I don't think is advisable. See, I believe that if you're a professional actor and you want to do believable performances, then in a very positive way, you are living a dual personality. Okay, you are, because and in a very positive way, in the sense that KK Menon, the person, and KK Menon, the actor. These are two things that are riding in the same body and mind and heart. And that line should never be blurred, according to me. That distinction has to be kept by the person, so that tomorrow his choices can be not muddied by either personalities.
Right.
That's the whole point. Right. For example, I might have a certain philosophy, ideology, whatever I want to call it, liking, But KK Menon, the actor, might go and choose the exact opposite of it, because that, as an actor, I find that interesting.
Got it.
So the moment, so that's where, but if you carry that actor's choice home after your shoot is over, then you're in for trouble, because you can't carry the character home. You can think about it. You can think about the script. You can think about scenes. But carrying that person home is intruding into KK Menon, the person. The actor is now intruding into the person. And vice versa also is not very good, because if KK Menon, the person, starts intruding into KK Menon, the actor's choices, then also it's bad, because then gradually from an actor, he will turn into an activist. That should not happen. Both have ACT, because my personal choices cannot be pushed onto the actor in me.
Right.
So that's how an actor normally is. And sometimes the lines get blurred, so you start doing things which actually, like for example, I'll tell you what, me as a person, I might despise a particular character that is given to me, but as an actor, I might find it the most interesting thing to do.
Right.
So I go ahead and do it. That is no reflection on me as a person, but that person is different. The moment I'm out of it, I would say that person is one ek number ka harami. I would say that.
What? Yeah,
but
exactly.
The actors. So that's what. So hence, I don't know about the example that you gave. While you're shooting that day, if you're still in that mood and all that, I'm fine with that. But as long as you don't carry it after that home or anywhere else, because what tomorrow if I'm playing an underworld or a killer,
Yeah.
What happens then?
Wouldn't
So,
be nice. So,
yeah.
but do you think it's affected? Do you think that it's a put on sometimes when you're famed for your method, like a Christian Bale is, or someone from our country would be? Do you think it's affected, or is it actually possible that someone is completely delving in that and in that zone and becoming someone else and psychologically in sync with some completely different human being? Is that even possible, or
It's
psychologically?
possible. It's possible if if the person in him puts a limit to it where it should end. See, the
Okay.
point is that there are a few principles in cinema performances. I'm not talking of theater performance, okay? I'm talking of cinema performance. Cinema performances, there are certain principles that you need to understand. Is that the idea is to make things believable,
Right.
okay? Which is why I call myself a simulator and not an actor. I simulate things. I simulate it to the extent that the audience might feel that I'm actually experiencing it. I need to do that as an actor. That's my intention. So, so the moment you do that, for that, certain criteria has to be met. You need to forget your own self. You need to forget your own ego. As I said, you need to forget the person that you are.
Right.
If you carry your ego into the character, then there's a problem. So things like that. So it's possible that these things might happen, but you need to know when to stop that and then live normally. I mean, you can't just carry on. And vice versa also, as I told you earlier. KK Menon, the person will say, my ideology is not this. So please don't do this. The actor will say, okay, I'll not do this. Okay, okay. And there it is. Then you start becoming gradually into an activist or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So the actor goes for a toss.
I think I understand what you're saying.
So the actor goes for a toss. Yeah.
Okay. So let's change gears, get into movies now. Which I'm very excited about. Syed Akhtar Mirza's Naseem, was that your debut film?
Yeah. Thankfully, my debut film was in front of film camera, not television camera. So it was film camera first, and then of course I did good television as well. So it so happened that one of the rehearsals I was rehearsing with, I think, Makan Deshpande.
Okay.
And of course, one of those pauper days of mine, which there was one track pen and 2 shirts or t-shirts that I had. So we were rehearsing and all that stuff for that. And Makan keeps going to various people. He knows a lot of people. And he had this firm belief that I'm a great actor. I don't know if then. So he keeps taking me to various people. And one of these journeys was to Syed Mirza. And he happened to be making this film called Naseem. And I told him, this is a great actor, you used to do and all that stuff, very good. Syed just trusted blindly and said, okay, fine, let's do this. He gave me a little cameo to do. It's a very small little cameo in that.
Okay, brilliant. Which brings me to the first and most exciting project as per me. And I know that you don't typically prefer to talk about your favorites, but I have singled out what I think would be people's favorites. The hugely popular cult classic Paanch, and your collaboration with Anurag Kashyap having begun with Last Train to Mahakali. I think you'd already worked with him.
That also was a 1 hour. That also was a 1 hour television.
Right.
One of the stories again. Yeah.
Okay. So first, let's get into Paanch. And how was that experience working with? Would you agree if I said fairly new faces? Everyone was fairly new, and then there was Anurag Kashyap.
I was also new. Yeah.
Right.
I had done Bhopal Express before that.
Right.
And the scene before that, and a lot of television. This 1 hour stories.
Correct.
So that was my experience. But it was absolutely wonderful because I think Paanch is the only genuine film noir in Hindi cinema. Otherwise, everybody kind of justifies the evil and all that stuff here. But film noir per se, I think Paanch was a pathbreaker as far as Hindi films.
Absolutely. Yeah. Most downloaded, I think, Hindi movie of all time on different platforms. So
I call it the most seen and the most unreleased film.
Okay, so there is a scene, and I wanted you to deconstruct this for us. Is that your character Luke, who is quite eccentric, has a really bad sort of temper, loses it at a point in time when you are faking an abduction, and Luke is beating his friend up. And I'm watching that scene where when you're clubbing him with an object, there is this cry of rage that you do. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about specifically. When you're beating this guy up, right? You just suddenly do this cry of rage, and then you continue beating him. And I was just curious to know, I didn't seem that it could have been rehearsed. And did that happen in the moment? What, like that level of madness, which I have seen you exhibit in movies like Sarkar, I've seen you exhibit it a bit in Shaurya, Gulaal definitely, and so many other movies. How does that rage come from a man who is so calm, so peaceful? How do you pull that out of you?
The same way as eccentric dance moves would come in Sajna Jiwari. The same thing. I mean, it's not. It's just that it's one form of emotion. If you're in that moment, magic happens, according to me. If you try and if you are conscious of what you're doing, like I told you earlier, you need to immerse yourself in that at that point in time in acting. You have to be that person, and once you're that person, magic and let only and surrender, of course, at that point in time. Only then magic will happen. And there are many a time where I don't think I can repeat myself again. That particular act. I can do it, but it will be slightly different from the previous one. So, are you breaking? Are you breaking? Or is the audio breaking?
No. It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just
marveling
at you.
I mean, things like people say Shaurya ka monologue, Sallah ki jo Shaurya mein hua tha.
Yeah.
Now, it is not a designed thing. It is just that you're prepared. You're prepared, one, as an actor. And number two, at that point in time, you have surrendered yourself to that person that you play.
Correct.
And removed your own ego out. Removed everything about you out.
Correct.
So the moment you do that and sincerely do it, you are at least opening the doors for Providence to give you magic. It's not your magic. So I don't take ownership of all that. And I don't take ownership of the fact, I have done this and this is the scene. If you ask me how, I'll say just these two things, that I was prepared with what I had to say. And at that point in time, you surrender. And you need to, in life, try and practice surrender, because surrendering is not easy because we're all egoistic people. Okay.
Sure.
So at that point in time, you really need to be surrendering yourself to that particular moment.
Yeah.
And that moment will give you the magic.
Yeah.
And the second take that you do might not be the same that you do in the first.
Right.
So that's why I said. So I don't know if people say, aapne kaisa bola tha line? I don't know.
It just
at that point in time, it just came. The idea is to, and I don't have the habit of dialoguing. I have conversational habit. So until I'm giving a speech, for example. Otherwise, I try to make it conversational. Then dialogue. I don't have the dialoguing way of acting.
Correct.
So posthumously, I don't think I'll be remembered for my lines. I'll be remembered for my performances, not the lines.
Okay.
So things like that. So that's kind of thing. So I don't really know how I said that line and where does the comma come and the full stop come and all that stuff. I don't. Any which way when I rehearse, I quite disrespect the commas and full stops. I remove them first. And I make the text as naked as possible, so that it's not ornamented with anything. There's no preconceived ornament put on it. And then you imbibe that, take it with you, make it your line, and it just becomes yours. The moment it's yours, then you can use it the way you want to use it.
Yeah.
Depending on the magic of the moment.
Right. So
I don't know. This cry must have come in one of those moments. I don't know.
It was just amazing. And to those watching right now and are aspiring actors, this is masterclass on acting for free that you guys have not even paid for. So thank your stars, because there is so much he's telling you. Just make notes of it. It's brilliant, because I am going to make notes of it. Okay. We're going to now move on to the next big film. One of your finer your performance is always fine, but more formidable works was in the movie Shaurya, as you mentioned. 3 scenes that are breakout scenes. One is the opening scene where he meets Major Siddhant Chaudhary, and he says, "Char credit card leke ghumte ho, Major." The bar scene where he talks about single malt and Shaurya of the Indian Army. And the third scene, which is the freaking best scene of the movie, is that meltdown moment he has in the courtroom when he's being confronted by Rahul Bose's questions, who plays Major Siddhant Chaudhary. So what kind of, I know, sir, you mentioned, you don't play you play the person, you don't play a caricature. And thankfully you didn't, because my father was in the Indian Navy and so was my grandfather. And I've grown up around, in military bases. I know people don't walk and strut around with a stick under their armpit and do the weird talk they do with that scarf around, so you did a very real portrayal. And you've typically played a lot of these very very sure of themselves kind of characters, powerful characters, men in uniform, so how did you prepare for this performance? Because it seemed very, very much like a real army officer would have been. Did you have interactions? How did you go about this performance preparation?
No, normally my interaction. See, Samar has an ex-NDA, so he has an idea of army. Plus, we had consulting people who were from the army, so ex-army. So it became easy for me in terms of any doubt is something that came from them. Any doubt is something that we don't normally use. Doubt, is something that they use. Which I never knew, but it came from them. That is how we kind of bully sometimes doubt. So so these things come up. I mean, when you're in the space, when you're in that journey, things come up. So for me to prepare, as I always say, it's the text. Number one. Number two is the interaction with the writer and the director. Now, once these two you have to do extensively, and the character, the person that you're playing will come from that script, from that text, not from the outside sources. Nobody can tell you. You don't go outside marketing for. I mean, for example, people do a lot of research outside.
Yeah.
I've seen that people doing a lot of research outside, but ultimately they come up with some kind of mannerism.
Right.
They say, "Arey, wo banda na used to do this all the time." So that's mannerism marketing. You have gone and marketed to the market to buy some mannerism. That's not the way. So research should be done very judiciously. If you have some doubt somewhere in the script that you need some clarification about, not for writing a PhD thesis, but which is going to be helpful for you in the act, then you find something more about it. I doubt if that is everything about research is so essential. It's all there within the text.
Achha.
And from within the text, you need to find that person that you're going to play. So hence I had given that Aladdin ka Chirag example, because that person lies in that lamp only.
Correct.
You cannot go outside. It's there. So you need to really bring him out. For that, you need to reread and see. And then automatically it will dawn upon you, I'm getting an idea of this man. Then gradually then you got to search that man from within you. That's the next step.
Right.
So you do that and it happens. So these things are happening. And plus, the more you interact with the writer whose original idea it is, or the right director whose vision it is, you will be within those confines of what they want to do, and then yet do magic for it.
Okay.
So I always say that the actor's job, if he's given a square, is to not to go outside the square. Is to search the depth and the height of the square and make it into a cube. A cube is a form.
Right.
That is what the actor's job. If you're given a circle, then it's your job to make it into a sphere. If you're given a triangle, it's your job to make it into a pyramid. That's your job as an actor. You might be given the basic dimensions. People sometimes just go outside that, do extracurricular stuff, and think that they're adding on. It doesn't add. That stuff has no depth. No
but let me play the devil's advocate on this. Say that you had very deliciously written lines in Shaurya, right? Like all were brilliant lines. Char credit card and all that. Or mere golf ka ball jab jata hai and stuff. So if you did not have such lines, then do you not think that you may have to, because how much can you internalize when sometimes you may have to use your craft to be doing something a little attractive, maybe in that form of mannerism, like some actors do, a stammer, have a limp. Resorting to that, would you call it a deficiency of an actor then, or would you say that, how would you then go about it? If your lines are
plain and simple, I call it gimmick. I call it a gimmick. If you're going to do all the time this, it's a gimmick. It doesn't mean anything to me as an actor, as an audience. It's a gimmick. So it's a mannerism gimmick, which I don't really approve of. I think that has got no internal process. If I see no internal process in a performance, it bores me, because then that is all the starry acting that you do. You can do this as a star. You can do whatever you want. The same thing is being applied here. The same logic, and the thing like, for example, and you do this stuff, all that. That's all mannerisms. That's all nothing to do with acting. Acting is a very internal. See, there is nothing called external acting.
Right.
All acting is internal. You might play an extroverted character, but that too is an internal acting. So he might be an extroverted character, but that has to be. It is not an external acting at all. So, which is why he'll never be Besura. because he's doing it internally.
Fair enough.
So that is very essential. So anything that you do externally, like flicking of the hair, bringing a mannerism, doing this to your shoulder, is all external. That takes it away from the internal process. So you need to really see, the idea is to prepare distilled water. To purify it. The water, the more you distill, the more you purify, ultimately it will have a distilled product that you have.
Correct.
And that's what you're seeking, in a performance. You're not seeking the ornamentation. Ornamentation to sabhi log karte hain. Ornamentation slow motion bhi karta hai aapko. है ना? That's ornamentation. That let the director do if he wants to.
I know.
So you don't say that I am going to put background music in my head and then turn. You don't do that.
Of course.
You turn. You just turn. You just walk. You do some stuff. Let them do what they want to do with the camera.
Okay.
In terms of style. Yeah.
So that's the verdict on it, guys. So another pearl of wisdom. It all comes from within. There is nothing that you need to resort to externally. And that will be a shortcoming of an actor if you had to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is in the script itself. Wonderful. Okay. Which brings me to one of my favorite all-time movies, which is Gulaal. And so Dukey Bana's character, and that opening monologue scene, which I'm sure everyone raves about. What was a preparation that you did for that monologue? Because that's like nothing else ever witnessed in Hindi cinema. Was that very hard for you to sort of be able to, because there's also the angst of that character, right? And can you talk a bit about that character's angst as Dukey Bana? What was his angst?
My whole point is that I'm one of those actors who can't do a post-facto analysis of anything.
Okay.
For me, it's very difficult as to how. Now, the moment I start analyzing my performance, I have become a what do you call, a film critic or a film. Most of them are fake, but trying to be intelligent about something that I've done. It's for others to actually judge and see what. But I know for a fact that the process had to remain the same.
Acha. Okay.
Which is why I said it's quite boring for people, because you feel अरे यार करते रहो ये क्या चीज़ है, बोर हो जाऊंगा, boring है. But जो उसमें pearl, जो एक gem मिलता है उसके बाद में, that's worth it. What I'm trying to say. So the process was the same. Lines were in, I was doing everything that was. I was trying to find the person there. Spoke with Anurag a lot of times, because he had written the film. What exactly? So you keep speaking to the person whose idea it is and how it is. So you automatically start getting the germ of what the person is, and the person stands right in front of you, and then you need to just find that person from within you and internally.
Okay.
So even the evil ones that I do is actually me only. I mean, from within me. I mean, I'm not faking.
Right.
Which is why I always say that if I'm playing a very evil man, between action and cut, don't mess with me, because I'm not me. It's something else. So don't do that. Or if I'm playing somebody else. So it's from within me. Otherwise, it will never become believable.
Got it.
See, the idea always in acting is not to portray something artificially or through design. The idea is to make everything believable.
Correct.
Believable. You got to feel that, I can touch this person, I can feel this person, I can experience the same. That's the believability, which is why I say simulation. You simulate in a way that you almost feel the aircraft is going to crash. Simulator does that.
Sure.
They do simulator training when you're becoming pilot.
Correct.
You almost perspire if your control goes off, because everything is so real around you. So believable, not real, believable. So that's the whole idea. People unnecessarily get into either two tracks. One is the starism track, which is a different thing. That's their own choice. The other track is the realism track.
Yeah.
Which is also quite a myth, because there's a thing called realism in cinema. Because realism is governed by space and time. The space and time governs realism.
Correct.
But the moment you have a department called editing, there is no realism. You've jumped time, you've jumped space. There is no realism. So the idea is to not be real, but to make it believable.
Got it.
So you need to have that craft in cinema. That one more craft, unlike theater, the editing is there. So you need to understand, so from this scene, I'm jumping to that scene. So how do I make this believable? And after thinking everything, once action is called, surrender. Forget all your wisdom and all that stuff. Just do it. Because you already trained your mind in a particular, build your muscle memory already in a way by thinking about it. That's enough. It'll take you somewhere. So it's like learning and yet unlearning it. And that's a paradox. It's an oxymoron. But
very interesting. Yeah. And
So,
sorry, go on.
so yeah, one more little thing about Gulaal. See, Gulaal was made. There was a gap in between because Jammu Sukan, the producer, died in between. So we did part of it, and then we had to just take a sabbatical because it couldn't happen further. So half the film happened after 2 years. So it was half first and half later. So the people behind the scenes have done a wonderful job in matching continuity t-shirts, because shirts in red light, your shirt might look different. Now to search for that same shirt which was worn then is very difficult. So they've done a wonderful job trying to knit it back again. And we as actors had to pick it up from there, after where we had left. So gap of 1.5, 2 years happened in between. So, and that second thing was with very, very, very limited budgets because we had to complete the film.
Right.
So we were shooting day and night. So I remember this particular speech happened at around, I think, 2:33 in the night.
Wow.
In that little fort and lights and all that stuff. Everybody was tired. The lightmen sitting up on the somewhere on the ramparts of the fort was like that, and he was, I think, went off sleep with the, he went off to sleep with the lights. So when I was doing that sequence, and the cameras were facing me, different magnifications. It was a one take kind of a thing, one shot kind of a thing, including Shaurya was a one shot. So there were cameras facing me and different magnifications, and there were people standing, couple of them facing me behind. Raja was standing in front of the camera, over his shoulder, etc. The camera was facing me. So I began the speech, and that Jack and Jill went up the hill and Bosudika is actually that moment's improvisation.
Are you serious?
In the script. Yeah. So it was Jack and Jill was not there in the script. Nor was the Gali there. Achha. And the Gali, that's why I said when you read a text a number of times, it's a big call. If you have to give one bad word to a character, it's a big call. But when you read the text a number of times, you realize that in the last scene, this guy has given the same Gali somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes to you only if it is justified. It will never come to you otherwise. It's not a gimmick. It comes to you because you have read the script so many times, the text so many times, that मालूम है उस line पे उसने गाली दी है उधर वहाँ पे, but यहाँ पे नहीं दी. So that got juxtaposed into this.
Wow.
So it so happened that when I said whatever that line was, and then I added that Jack and Jill was not there in the script. Jack and Jill, and I think I broke that sentence in between, and I gave this gali.
Right.
And it so happened, it was 3 o'clock in the night, everybody was really tired. I said that gali, that cuss word, and suddenly the lightman over there got up and said, "Ha! Hazar!" and poor fellow, he must have thought his AOP is giving him a gali. He just got up in the middle of the shot.
My God!
And I could see behind the camera, Anurag is falling off laughing. Everybody is falling off laughing, and I'm continuing my speech.
Wow! Yeah.
And that was how it ended. After it ended, and of course everybody had a laughter. And the people who were facing me and the back to camera, they were also laughing. From inside, like that, that little serious face. I could see all of them. So I had to really blur them off and continue.
Okay. And by Raja, he's referring to Raj Singh Chaudhary, who plays Dilip in the movie, the protagonist of the film. How was it working with Raj Singh Chaudhary, and what's your association with him, if you would like to talk a bit about that?
I think Raja was very much instrumental in Gulaal being put into place, especially after the mishap in between.
Oh,
the producer passing away. He really worked hard to bring everybody together, at least the finances for the film, not the actors, at least for the film to get complete. The production requires some money. All that stuff, he really worked hard. And he also worked hard on his character. I mean, he made it, he went really internal in that
Right.
That, as the protagonist in that.
Yeah.
So, he worked really hard. And he had done a big parts in Black Friday before that.
Right.
So, and he was, and the whole team was very good. Yeah. The whole team there's not an iota of filminess in any of them. So,
right. Yeah. Okay, great. And then the next one is Haider. I know that you've mentioned in your interviews in the past that you don't really have any favorites and you don't find anything challenging, because when you have the skills for it, you should be able to do anything. However, would you be able to say that Haider's character was your most complex? Khurram's character was the most complex, or would you think there were some others? that could have made
complexity again is a post facto analysis. I don't know, but see, the reason why I say I don't use the word challenging is not because I have a big ego about my skills. It's just that I look at things differently, in the sense that I look at things as interesting or uninteresting. It's not challenging or not challenging. So if I have something that's extremely interesting, if it's challenging, then I don't know how, because you can't labor in art, as I told you earlier. A challenge requires a lot of labor. And that is, when you feel the labor, then the whole charm of art is gone. I mean, the whole charm of doing that thing is
Can
gone.
I just interrupt you for a second? Yeah. So in that, for instance, with Khurram's own character, right, the challenge, for example, to a third person could have been maybe internalizing the accent, the diction, the body language of a person coming from that kind of a milieu, which is alien to you. Could that be challenging if you were just not getting it, or, you know, coming from Mumbai where you spend much of your life? Would that feel challenging?
That would be for me interesting.
Okay, but never feel like,
but I'm going to take that journey. I'm going to take that journey, and I can't pre-assume that I can't do it. That becomes challenging. If I start assuming, oh, it's difficult for me, then I think it's a problem, because then you will hesitate in that. Every step you'll hesitate.
Correct.
But if you're going to, tomorrow, if I know I can't win against a champ in tennis, correct, but it will be interesting for me to play.
Correct.
Play
correct. Acha, okay.
But challenging hai, to main nahi, wo, matlab, wo gadbad ho jata hai phir. Then you start
I
doing
understood
something
now
else.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Acha, now I understand where you come from on that. Acha.
I need to see it as interesting. That's when that will motivate me to do stuff. Otherwise, it doesn't motivate me. Therein lies the answer. So, for example, I know Shakespeare's the original piece, and Claudius I am aware of. Though we had twisted a bit in the film, but I'm aware of the original. So, Claudius in Shakespeare itself is one of the most complex characters.
Acha.
So I realized that, because that guy is pulled in three different directions. One is his ambition, the other is his love for Gertrude, that's Ghazala in this, and third is his repentance for what he's done.
Okay.
So it's three-pronged. He's being pulled in three ways. So you, at every point in time in your act, you need to bring that element, and when you're performing, you need to feel it. And it will manifest the way it want to manifest. Don't design it. Don't say I have to now feel ambition here and love there and aisa nahi. So you need to feel all the three, and that's the person that you are. Okay. And you surrender yourself to that moment, and then it happens, and things happen. And as far as the language is concerned, that's a part of any actor's job.
Right.
You know,
fair enough.
Because that's why I don't do whenever a South Indian film comes to me. My first condition is I will be speaking in Hindi or English. I can't learn a new language.
Correct.
But they say, kitne log karte hain, sir, waisa. Maine kaha, wo, see, the point is that, like, for example, Ghazi Attack.
Yeah.
Ghazi Attack, they were doing one take in Telugu, one take in Hindi. I did both the takes in Hindi only, because I told and producers were very contemporary producers. They were very, they knew what I'm talking about. So I told them one thing, that, listen, you have called me because you think I'm a good actor by seeing my Hindi cinema.
Correct.
Now, Hindi is a very operative word in that performance. If I don't have the facility of the language and the nuances of that language to manipulate that language when I want to,
fair enough, yeah,
I won't be half the actor that I am. So if you're giving me, then I might as well do a French film then, or a German film. I don't understand that language either. So the idea is to understand the language, know the juices of that language, the various ways it's being used. That gives you the facility to just flow.
Got it.
So I did one take for him in Telugu and one take for him in Hindi. The moment I did the Hindi stuff, he said, "So this is what we want." I said, "Then you have to do it in Hindi," because I improvised a bit. So things happen. So then he agreed. So which is why I'm saying that language is a part of the process. So I have to speak Kashmiri Hindi. And what did I do? I didn't really do any. I just spoke. I told Vishalji to just give me a guy who's and a co-actor is a Kashmiri in that. So we spoke, and we just spoke. We just kept speaking, and when it happened, that's when you realize, there are only 2-3 things involved in changing this language. You get the crux of it. You know?
Okay.
And that's when the language kind of became Kashmiri Hindi. Because in Kashmir, people speak very Khalis Urdu. They are very good Urdu. The pronunciation is perfect. But when it comes to Hindi or English, for that matter, there's a slight twist to it. In the sense that in Hindi they don't use the stressed letter. For example, pa, pha, pa, bha. The bha, the pha, or the gha is not there in their Hindi.
Okay.
When they speak. So what they do is they dwell on the lower stressed letter. For example, gar, they will say.
Acha.
It's basically gar for them, but gar they hold on a bit. It says,
okay.
Gar ja raha hu.
Acha. So right.
It's just that much. And you understand this is what the phonetics are. And when they use English, they pronounce the ED. For example, he'll do that.
Okay.
And it's genuine.
Okay.
It's genuine when they say it. It's not like a gimmick that they're using. So you need to understand that it's real for them. Like I said, Gaila Aila Hindi in Pune is genuinely said.
Yeah.
It's not sent for you to
for impact or
or to humor you. ये कैसा हिंदी बोला नहीं? He'll say, अरे मैं वहाँ गया था यार. गया था तो उसने बोला ऐसा. बोलेगा. He's just like that. He feels that he's saying the right thing.
Correct.
That's the whole idea. Sometimes we turn into gimmicks, like the shoulder and all that. So we turn into gimmicks. अच्छा ED बोल रहा है ना, अभी मैं इस पे खेलता हूँ. नहीं मत खेलो. Just be true to that moment and it will happen.
Achha.
So Haider also was a very interesting journey for me, because Claudius was in Shakespeare itself was a complex character.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Any memories of like you mentioned for Gulaal? Any interesting memories? And it had Irfan Khan also, the late legendary Irfan Khan. Any memories of working with him or interactions with him?
Irfan and me have worked a long time back in a television thing called Dar. Long back in the beginning of a time. So we've known each other for quite some time. I mean, what to say about Irfan? He's absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's just another level. So so we had our own interactions after Paanch Tomar and after Mir film and all that stuff, and we shared our own little problems that we have in terms of how to operate in this industry. All that stuff we've shared. So
okay. All right. Okay.
I miss him quite.
Sure. And we're kind of nearing the end, and I want to get to Special Ops. What drew you to this show? And this is hugely popular. You guys should watch it on Hotstar. Neeraj Pandey is the director. So can you tell us a bit about this show and what drew you to it?
Again, see, Neeraj, actually a whole batch of people have come out from these 1 hour slots that we used to do on television in those days. Tishu, Digmanshu Durya, Irfan, Vishal Bharadwaj, Neeraj Pandey, a lot of people who have come from there. I mean, the 1 hour films that we used to do. So I knew Neeraj quite some time. Neeraj and Sheetal, his partner, both of them, I knew quite some time.
Okay.
Right from those days. So we had done a television 1 hour slot also. So it's since then we know each other. So it so happened that one day Neeraj called me and said, "Jab fursat ho to aa jana yaar office mein." Like I know for a fact that Neeraj, I completely trust.
Correct.
That he will never ever misuse me or underuse me. I know for the fact. So that's one thing that certain people you know
correct,
that
correct.
they're calling you for because there is something substantial. Neeraj, the writer, has this very unique quality of bringing humor at the most unexpected places.
Right.
And you don't know whether to laugh or what to do, that kind of a thing. So his writing has that little that
nuance.
So which becomes very interesting for an actor, because you also when you read it, aisa bol diya isne, aisa feeling aata hai,
and then I just want to ask you a couple of questions and we'll wrap up, is around artistic expression and creativity, morality or whatever. So what I'm trying to say is, in the name of art, can filmmakers or actors partake in doing cinema that breaks boundaries as per their understanding and make anything? Or do you think that there has to be a certain sort of a boundary within which they need to operate, so that they don't necessarily offend the sensibilities of people or cultures or communities?
I gave you the reason why I gave you that basic example earlier was about the person and the actor living within you. The person's choices might not be the actor's choices. So his likes might not be the actor's likes that he has. So it might be diametrically opposite also. So that therein, the reason why I gave that particular base is because these are the things that one needs to go back and see that, all cinema is fiction. All cinema, including biopics, are fiction.
Achha.
Okay. For the simple reason that when you sing Attenborough's Gandhi, for example,
Right.
and you are watching that film, is that Gandhi? No, that's Ben Kingsley.
Right.
Correct? So but you're accepting him as Gandhi because he looks like that. So you already entered the world of make-believe in a biopic. So the factual representation is not the responsibility of fiction. Fiction, you take cinematic liberties. So according to me, even biopics are fiction. That is why you have a separate category called documentaries.
Okay. Makes sense.
Documentary comes from the word called document, which means that you need to have proof of the fact. There's no cinematic liberty. You can't, in a documentary, you can't show Gandhiji thinking about something. No.
Right.
You can't. That liberty you can take in
Fiction.
cinema.
Yeah.
In cinema. And cinema, you can take a lot of liberties. So sometimes a lot of hullabaloo is created on something that's fiction. So I said this piece of fiction, even if it's a biopic, will carry the bias of the writer and the director. Will carry the liberties of the director. So, but that is fiction. That's a particular take of a director or a writer on that topic. So, but it is still make-believe, is what I'm trying to say. So you've already entered the make-believe world, and then you are searching for facts in a make-believe world.
Got it.
That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
In a make-believe world, it's make-believe.
Right.
It might look like so basically that's why you have documentaries. So all that question that you asked pertains to this. Now, when you are doing that, what is the limit is the question. Am I doing it for the gimmick? Am I doing it for the marketing value? Or am I doing it actually for the story? This is something that the filmmaker will have to honestly think of himself.
Interesting.
And once he does that, he will automatically self-censor himself the way he wants to do it.
Got it.
He will bring out that product which is not gimmicky, which is not to create unnecessary sensation. He will do his own. And that is where, art will push the boundaries. And you say push the boundaries. That's the whole idea. There's a word called boundary over there. Push the boundary. But boundary still is there.
Yeah.
The idea is how much you want to push it. That's all. You're not saying pushing and breaking the boundary. No.
So you agree there is a boundary?
To any freedom, there is a boundary.
Right.
Freedom doesn't exist without boundaries. That is the whole misnomer, because freedom is an oxymoron. Freedom, if you don't have boundaries, you don't have freedom.
Right.
Right? You can take an example from the physical sense, and then you can extrapolate that to the other spheres of activity. If India didn't have a border,
then what is the freedom? Yeah. Where is the freedom?
Are you free?
Right.
You're free within boundaries. You're free because there is a boundary.
Correct.
That's the whole point. So to say that it's not a free for all.
Yeah.
You are a free country because you have a certain boundary, and within that country you operate. So hence you have the freedom to operate. Correct. Similarly, the freedom of you living in your house. House has walls, so you can be in your shortest of attire, bindas in your house.
Correct.
But can you say that okay, fine, that the walls will go off and suddenly you'll not be like that?
No, of
so
course.
The boundary, your freedom is limited, is given to you because of the boundary. So you can, in your house, you can speak the way you want to speak, you do whatever you want to do. But moment that you go outside the boundary, then you've got to be careful. I mean, you've got to be careful in terms of freedom. So freedom is a very misconstrued concept.
Yeah.
People think freedom means free for all. It's not the free for all at all. Freedom, you have to have a boundary first. Then you can be free within that boundary.
But you know what the argument that people make is also like the people who want to go beyond being, bound, is that who defines what is a boundary? Because that is also subjective, right? So what may be a boundary for you may not be a boundary for someone else. So how does one sort of define that boundary? By consensus.
No, the simple procedure is that if you're talking of art, it is that person who will decide. Because that person will have to have the sensibility. And if he does something which is not, is just for a sensation, he'll be caught out here. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's said that that this is done for sensation.
Acha.
Let it be. Forget it. It's okay. But a responsible artist knows his boundaries. He knows where to
Right
stop,
from
to stop,
wrong.
to whatever.
Yeah.
He knows how, and he won't do it because of somebody else's reaction, because his own internal censorship operates all the time.
Correct.
Which is why I said that he knows for a fact that if my walls are not there, I need to behave in a particular manner.
Right.
I can't be in the same attire as I'm sitting.
Fair enough.
It's as simple. I'm giving a physical example so that people can understand what I'm saying. So if you extrapolate that into everything else, you'll get an answer. So even your art, you can't shed it off all its clothes just because it's not that. Art also has to have a certain decorum, a certain beauty, certain things. Yeah. So there's no cut and dry answer to your question in the sense of where do you draw the limit. No, it depends on the individual.
Okay.
And the individual has to be responsible enough as an artist to understand.
Sure. Okay.
If he doesn't, then either you should ignore him or just forget about him and just move ahead.
Got it. Okay. So with that, we're almost done. Do you have any upcoming projects that you would like to talk about, sir? Any shout outs that you would want to give to your upcoming works?
Not now. Nowadays, it's a era of contracts and legal and everything. No?
Right.
So many things. Yeah. So you're allowed to speak of something. You're not allowed to speak of something. So
fair enough. All right. So I just want to let you know, KK sir, that when I first saw your works and onwards, it was a bucket list that everyone has. And on that bucket list was an opportunity to get to meet you. Never had I ever foreseen that I would have this honor to interview you. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight and honor. And I hope that I get to meet you sometime as well. But thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure interviewing such a masterclass.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. World, very, very far from here. For the rest of you, please give me a round of applause. Sorry, I'm going to take that again. I've been rehearsing that for a bit.